Warning, this content is for entertainment and educational purposes only.
So Chase, man, tell us about your long acting GH experiment.
Man,
We're gonna get a frowny face from Kurt.
No, I'm not. No frowny face. We just don't know. Chase is probably the only one in the world who's ever done.
I mean, it was. I mean, like, well, I mean, the big thing is it definitely worked, but I mean, I was using a shitload of it, you know. But like, so I started off with one pen, which a Ngenla pen is. If you actually like measure out all the liquid in it, it's 1.5 milliliters. They have it dosed at. It says it's the concentration is like 60 IUs per 1.2 mils or something like that, and or it's 72. Yeah, 72 IUs per 1.2 mils, and there's 1.5 mils in a pen. So you pull all that out, and it's 90 IUs. And so week one, I injected the whole pen on Sunday, and was like hoping that, you know, I'd get blood work on Friday and see if it's still, you know, showing in my system, because it's supposed to be a week-long thing. And so then, you know, I got blood work Friday and didn't see a damn thing. It looked like I was completely natural. Like my growth hormone level was like a 2, and yeah, it was nothing was showing. So I was like, okay, well, apparently it doesn't last even 5 days. So the next week I was like, okay, I'm going to get blood work on Wednesday. And so then I did 2 pens on Sunday. And because technically, like, if it's going to spread it out across a week, you got to divide however many IUs you're injecting and do that. But then also on Pfizer's website, they talk about how there's a conversion between the IUs of Ngenla to like genotropin. And according to the website, it's like for every 1 IU of genotropin, it's 2.77 IUs of Ngenla is what they used on the kids to make them grow. So I was like, okay, so I was going off of that conversion. That's why I was injecting so much, because it's technically supposed to be 2.77 times higher than that. And I was working my way towards doing 16 IUs a day equivalent of genotropin. So I was on half that, 8 IUs, technically, according to their thing, did two pens of that. And then when I went in to go get blood work on Wednesday, my LabCorp the whole system was down and I couldn't get blood work. And I was like, shit. So then I was like, okay, well, screw this. Let's just go all in on it and do a pen every other day, since I don't even know, like, just so we can be sure and see if growth hormone even shows up on, you know, blood work. And so at that point, I just started doing a pen every other day, which would be equivalent to like 16 to 18 IUs of genotropin a day. And did that for a week and a half, got blood work on Friday. Like my last whole pen injection was Thursday morning. No. Thursday? Yes. Thursday morning, got blood work Friday morning, and my IGF or my GH serum number came back at 155, which should, like, if you inject 10 IUs and you get a test done 2.5 hours later, it'll probably show up around like 25. So I was like, okay, I got 155. That's going to be like equivalent to like 60 IUs or something like that I did 24 hours before. And my levels were still like super raised. But also in that time period where I was doing a pen every other day, my weight was just flying up and just water getting pushed into the muscle. And I posted a picture on my Instagram of like where I was when I started the thing. I was like 236 or 37 when I started the experiment. And at that point, when I got that 155 serum score back, I was 255. And that was 4 weeks later. And like it at that dose, because like the first week I was kind of like, I don't know if I really noticed anything, but my weight was like trickling up and I wasn't eating anything different. Like I went up like two or 3 pounds.
Is that
and then
the pick, Chase?
Yeah, that's That's the difference. So like things just kind of like filled out and got a lot wider. My waist got a little bit wider as well. Yeah, things got harder. And I mean, yeah, that's 20 pounds basically of a difference there. But like the first week, yeah, I went up a few pounds. The second week, I went up a few more pounds, and then that last week and a half is when I couldn't even control. Like I would eat a super low day, and my weight would still go up, just like if I was going on a vial of Serostim a day. And but the problem there is that I was doing a pen every other day, and those pens are like, depending on who you get it from, it can be on average like $200 a pen. So when you like go when you go with the cost comparison there, it's like $700 a week versus, you know, depending on where you get your Serostim, it could be $300 to $600 a week doing that. But so from that point, I was like, okay, either like I'm doing way more than, you know, 16 or 20 IUs a day, according to that serum number. So I was like, let's back off and do half a pen every other day and see what the numbers look like with that. And then got blood work. Don't have the results from that yet. And then after I did that, I backed off again to a third of a pen every day to see what that comes back at. And I'm waiting on that blood work to show up. And then I from all those different blood works, I feel like I can like kind of get a grasp on, you know, how much you can take to get a certain GH number. But then at the same time, I'm kind of like at the third of a pen dose every day, is that going to give the same result as a vial a day of Serostim? Because like I'm thinking a third of a pen a day is going to give me like a 50 on a GH serum score, which would be like 20 IUs of Serostim a day. But if it doesn't give the physical result, then that's where it's kind of like, okay, you got to find a happy medium there. So I just took my last shot of it yesterday, and I'm going to take like 4 to 6 weeks off from it. And then so that it's like cleared out of my system, and I go from nothing to injecting a third of a pen a day and see if it feels like I'm starting up Serostim again. So I have a feeling it's not going to go that way. I have a feeling it's going to be closer to be like, you got to spend $500 to $600 a week on Ngenla to equal $500 to $600 a week on Serostim, and it'll kind of equal out in that sense. But as far as the IUs, there's something definitely with that long acting bit in there. It definitely changes things. And I don't know, it's like the growth hormone is floating in there, but because it's like attached to the HCG or whatever, it's not letting it go. So maybe you're not getting the actual full 155 serum score that it was. And it's just, I don't know. It's very strange, but it worked, but it was a lot of money to figure it out. So
Yeah, that's interesting. Your pictures, I mean, you can definitely see a difference.
yeah, it was pretty crazy. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on it, Kurt? I know you mentioned that it's a lot different.
What's different? So, like Chase said, it has 38 amino acids from HCG bound to it. So you can't, unlike a steroid, you can't attach an ester to it to slow it down.
Yeah.
So they took 38 amino acids from HCG and attached it and created a new chemical. So it's called somatrogon, not somatropin. If you look at I sent you the molecules, Paul. I don't know if you still have them in your text.
Yeah, probably somewhere.
The thought behind it was, initially it was for comfort, right? Little kids don't like injections daily. So that was kind of the original thing. But also what they're concerned with is you don't want IGF too high in children. So it's supposed to be like children under 12 that have delayed growth. What you want is to mimic the placental GH secretion for bone growth. So you don't get the IGF-1, you get IGF-2, which doesn't have any effect in adults. So it's going to interact with the liver in a different way than like a Serostim would. Right? And that's why they're all different products. Like Serostim is specifically for wasting, right? Genotropin, the dosing is for like, originally is for delayed growth. So they're all kind of designed different. It doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just, I've seen in pediatric patients that are older, like 17 and 18, when you look at their labs, they don't look like it's doing much. So then they switch them back to genotropin because the Ngenla wasn't.
I don't know how to say it.
I don't know how to say it either. But
It's weird.
So it wasn't. I was never busting your chops about it not work. We just don't know.
Yeah,
right?
it's
Like,
weird.
only studied in children. It seems safe. The side effects were like the same across the board between the two.
Yeah. I was also checking my fasting insulin every single time to make sure that wasn't climbing, because it's like you would think it'd almost be like MK677 where like your growth hormone's just like high constantly and you become diabetic, but like my fasting insulin never got over a 6. So like when I was off everything, when I was 237 pounds, my fasting insulin was like a 3.6. And then, I went on that. It went up to like a 5.5. And I was like, okay, well, this isn't a thing. So,
I mean, that would be my biggest concern with it is what you just said about the blood sugars, right? So growth hormone is supposed to be pulsatile with the biggest secretion at night. Women have a different, I'm more specifically talking about men. Women have a different effect from it. But my concern would, if a bodybuilder is using huge amounts for a prolonged period of time and it's constantly elevated, like what happens to their blood sugar? Because now you can't use glucose. Now your body's just running on fat acids, and then on top of it, they're eating a ton of chicken and rice. They're not able to use it. And what's the long term? I don't know if it'll ever be looked at because it wasn't designed for that.
yeah.
Like, that's why I think we use Ceristim at night. Like, I kind of switched my opinion about that. I feel like the whole dose of GH should just be given at night, not splitting it up. So I worry bodybuilders too will do the same thing. They'll split their GH in 4 doses, right? And then they add insulin on top of it, now you're not even getting a GH effect. Now you're only getting an IGF-1 effect. So it kind of defeats the purpose to me of even using GH. Right at that point, just use Increlux.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I never considered that. That's an interesting thought.
Yeah. I mean, that's my thought is like the whole thing where it's like, okay, the blood work is detecting that there's lots of growth hormone floating through here, but you can't access it. Is my thought, and it's like slowly trickling somehow.
That's my guess with the generic stuff too. I mean, I'm just speculating, but Chase, you and I have talked about it a bunch of times. I know Paul and I have talked about it a bunch of times. I feel like that's the difference between the generics and the pharma stuff is the fillers. They must prolong the release of it because the effect's not the same.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you shoot a bottle of a known generic that's tested and you shoot a bottle of a pharma, great, the effect are not the same. Even if they test out as pure, no dimmer, right? Like we've all done that. It just doesn't do the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like the pharma stuff is pretty dramatic, like right away.
Yeah.
Like your weight goes up the first day.
Yeah.
If anything, my weight dropped on generics from the diuretics in them.
That's exactly what I got from it too. Right. Like,
and then you feel all your muscles.
I went from when I tested a good generic this last year. I went from 18 IUs of Ceristim, switched to 20 IUs of generic a day. Immediately, my weight started dropping, and I was like I lost like 10 pounds, and I was like, am I even like I couldn't even tell I was on growth hormone. I was like, am I on anything? What is happening? And I was like having to bump up my food because I didn't want to just lose a bunch of weight.
There's the molecules.
Yeah, big difference.
Yeah, it's Kurt here. I got the pictures you sent me.
Yeah, so those are just the two different. So you can see. I mean, you don't have to be a chemist to see that they're just different things. They're not the same chemical. It doesn't mean it doesn't work. That wasn't my point. We just don't know. Yeah. And I'm always hesitant to tell people to try something that's not been, studied on that group because we just don't know. And I just worry that the diabetes thing would become a real issue.
It could. I mean, so that's the other thing is like I've constantly been, I haven't been trying to bulk because for that reason. So it's like everything that I've been doing this whole last 6 months has been dieting to prevent side effects more than anything, because I've been on 6 grams a test for the last however many weeks, but I've been dieting to prevent
6 grams a test.
You know what?
Holy shit, dude.
It would be kind of an interesting. It would probably hurt, but you could do. So sometimes we use potassium levels as a measurement of muscle growth. So like when you inject growth hormone, it's going to cause phosphorus, sodium, nitrogen retention, and potassium retention. nitrogen retention immediately doesn't mean muscle growth, right? Like if you come from a normal American diet and you eat a big steak and you test your nitrogen the next day, it's going to be elevated. That doesn't mean you grew tissue per se. If it's constantly held up, you're going to grow, most likely. But what we found is potassium levels in the muscle dictate actual new tissue because your potassium storage capacity is limited by the amount of muscle you have. Yeah. Sodium doesn't mean anything. Sodium retention from steroids or from growth hormone is outside of the cell, right? That again, that's a sodium potassium pump that everyone gets backwards. Sodium doesn't go in the cell; it pulls it out of the cell. So you don't want to measure that amount. Like that's why when you shoot growth hormone, you retain water.
Yeah.
But if your potassium level, like at a baseline, went up, it means that tissue is actually gained and not just right. Because when you start searching, it's clear not tissue immediately. That's nitrogen and sodium. Like you can't grow tissue in a day.
Yeah.
Or noticeable amount.
Yeah. It's interesting.
It'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you to go get a biopsy though.